entered strange universe. On this journey, we investigate the Arizona invasion. Dozens of UFOs over Phoenix. 10,000 witnesses across the state. Each of them saw the same craft in the skies. All ask why the national media has stayed quiet.
It really lends a person to wonder if there wasn't some type of media blackout or conspiracy.
Now, the evidence, the live sighting tapes.
Oh, look, one, two. Wait, where?
The cross-section of testimony from all walks of life.
I was terrified when I first saw it.
I felt it was a mile long.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
The video you can judge for yourself. Exclusive, a Strange Universe special report. The UFO arrival.
Major sighting here.
Also, a report from the Worldwide UFO Conference, where Arizona is the hottest topic in years. In the sighting capital of the nation, all agree the arrival is on schedule, and many insist disclosure is near. This is...
I'm Emmett Miller. When a giant comet streaks across our skies, many believe it's an omen of strange and cataclysmic events. And so goes the story of Hale Bopp and the UFOs. We've all been hearing the most terrible link, cultists outside San Diego. Their mass suicide may have been an attempt to join alien spacecraft rumored to travel in the comet's wake. But there's another event that many believe is connected to Hale Bopp. No lives were lost, yet untold lives were changed. A mass, statewide UFO sighting. If you thought the movie Independence Day was pure fantasy, you may think again after you study these videos and meet the witnesses. Correspondent Scott Lasky has the story.
We were looking up at the sky, and all of a sudden, it appeared.
It seemed to go up a lot higher, and that's when it went directly over us.
It was almost totally motionless. If our military is able to build aircraft like that, I am rather impressed with that kind of engineering capability.
Good evening, I'm Mark Bailey.
And I'm Robin Sewell. Thanks for joining us. We start tonight with those strange dots of light that were the talk of the town.
It may be the mother of all UFO sightings.
It seems like half the state seen it that day.
An unprecedented spectacle, witnessed by some 10,000 people all across Arizona, and captured by dozens of them on home video.
Oh, look, one, two. Wait, where? There's another one, too. Where? Oh!
Major sighting here.
An awesome display in the night sky that sparked widespread wonder and even some fear.
When they were all lined up there like that, I mean, they thought this was an invasion.
An event so well documented, yet so shrouded in secrecy and official denials, that it's now threatening to become the greatest UFO controversy ever.
Why the cover-up? What is the government afraid of letting know? Why are they afraid of letting the media know? Do they feel like it'll cause a panic?
It was the night of Monday, March 10th. These strange lights began appearing in the sky over Phoenix and other parts of Arizona.
The next night, I wasn't there. My wife saw two of them. And then the next night, I saw it. And now all of a sudden, we're having a show for all our neighbors to come and see it because we think, you know, let's do a reality check here. Let's make sure everybody else thinks this is not normal, that this is not
This man wants to be identified only as Steve. He got out his video camera that night. So did lots of others, as thousands in Arizona began witnessing the same phenomenon.
I was terrified when I first saw it. I thought it was a plane coming down to crash.
Ozma Linderman soon realized these were not regular aircraft. So did Mike Fortson.
It was so huge that I felt it was a mile long. And the reason I say that, it was about 3,000 feet off the ground. And as it was coming towards us, I could see the rest of it way down still to the north.
By Thursday, March 13th, the lights seemed to be everywhere, some darting across the sky, some hovering low on the horizon. Groups of them formed what appeared to be geometric formations.
We captured almost what seems like the grand finale that night.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, something shooting up in the sky with a tail of fire behind it.
This is what we saw right here. Two little objects
Watching something.
that were off to the left, and then one by one, four of them forming a horizontal line off to the right.
As the Arizona skies lit up like never before, so did the switchboards at Luke Air Force Base, police and sheriff's departments, Phoenix Airport, and local TV and radio stations. But callers say they were stonewalled, dismissed with jokes and laughs, given explanations like weather balloons and military flares, or handed official government denials of anything out of the ordinary.
The military says the lights over Arizona last night were flares, but the people who saw the lights last night say they couldn't have been flares. The lights were too bright. They were in the sky too long.
The orb was about so big, it was huge, wasn't it?
But Phoenix radio host Erskine Payton took the report seriously. He blasts other local coverage as inadequate for the magnitude of the event and wonders why the national media ignored it altogether.
Why do I feel like the coverage has been so limited here? It really lends a person to wonder if there wasn't some type of media blackout or conspiracy.
Erskine Payton goes as far as to suggest the U.S. government may have pressured the media to deliberately suppress the UFO sightings. He compared it to the reported capture of aliens in Roswell, New Mexico, nearly 50 years ago.
Roswell wasn't seen by 10,000 people. This has been seen by many, many more people, and they just do not want the information out.
It's a suspicion shared by many Arizona citizens who watched in awe and terror as these objects appeared before their eyes. Today, some are bewildered, some are angry, some are confused, some are scared, but all of them want answers, and they want them now. As I discovered when a group of them, videotapes in hand, gathered for a most unusual and fiery town meeting in the city of Tempe.
Ordinary people brought together by one extraordinary experience. We bring them together and investigate claims of a cover-up when Strange Universe continues.
If our military is able to build aircraft like that, I am rather impressed.
And later, and we're back with more UFOs over Arizona. Some say it's the long-awaited arrival, heralded by the Hale-Bopp comet. Others fear a war of the worlds, but the many witnesses simply want answers. Our Scott Lasky picks up the story.
They come carrying videotape proof that they're not crazy. 11 down-to-earth, hard-working Americans from different walks of life. Ordinary people who shared an extraordinary experience. They've come together in this meeting room in Tempe, a kind of instant support group. They show each other what they saw in the night skies of Arizona.
I noticed it in the sky for about 20 minutes, an amber light, very bright, just hanging there, waiting to see when it was going to land.
It was so huge, and it seemed that there were lights on top and lights around it.
All of a sudden, the moon turned yellow when it approached the moon, and I saw a vapor. Yeah, it was translucent, and I saw a vapor similar to gas fumes, but going in this direction. And we were in total disbelief of what we saw.
They had no idea.
They seem to find consolation in knowing they are not alone.
Is anybody convinced that what they saw was a UFO?
Oh, absolutely. I can't identify.
No question about it.
It hasn't been identified, right?
No.
So it's not.
They remind each other there are another 10,000 Arizonans who saw the same thing at the same time. Something strange and inexplicable and scary.
You see your family all of a sudden get very, very scared. My daughter, 7-year-old, had to sleep in our room that night, thinking that, because of the publicity out there with Independence Day and some of those movies, we're being attacked.
Then their fear turns into anger as they wonder out loud why nobody believes them. Nobody important anyway. Not the police, not the media, not the government.
We called the news to find out if anybody else had seen it or reported it, And they said it was the comet. And we said, no, it's not the comet. The comet's in the northwest sky. This is in the southwest sky. And they said, well, it's the comet. I said, well, I have video here. Well, you know, we were really not interested in it.
Whatever it was, nobody has a logical explanation.
They start using words like cover-up and conspiracy.
Wait, whoa, look at that!
I got that one on video. Explaining this away as a flare is a cover story. Or all of us wouldn't be here tonight talking about this.
There's another one too. Where? Oh.
I believe either the government knows everything or they know nothing.
I got that one on video.
There's 4 of them. Look at there's 3 of them all together.
I got the third one popping. How can 10,000 people all be crazy at the same time? Mass hallucination caught on videotape all over Arizona.
There's one behind the chimney. One just squared up.
I got 4 of them. Major sighting here.
Possibly they're trying to protect the public against something maybe that they feel we're not ready to handle.
What kind of lame excuse they gonna give us next?
Some wonder if what they saw might be the secret work of the U.S. military.
Why wasn't anybody scrambling? Why wasn't there any fighters out there? Maybe that's the reason that there wasn't any fighters scrambling. Maybe they knew what it was.
My wife thought that there were Air Force jets actually going after these things, trying to intercept them. And as soon as they got right near them, they just blacked out.
The military keeps changing their stories. Why don't they come clean and say, we don't know or we do know? That's all we want to know.
If the military is launching some kind of operation, why would they pick right in the flight path of Sky Harbor Airport?
2 of the people in this room used to be in the military. They scoff at the suggestion that what they saw were military flares.
I don't know what they are, but they're not they're not the flares like they say.
No, that is definitely not a flare. Flares do not gain altitude.
Regardless of what these lights are and where they come from, many of the people in this room suspect their government of knowing the truth and hiding it.
But if the authorities don't know what it is, they should say. And if they do know, they are accountable to the public, and they better cough up an answer.
There's only one thing these 11 people know for sure. What they saw in the sky is real, because they're still seeing it.
I don't know what it is, but there's something up there.
Maybe they're observing us.
Whatever it was, nobody has a logical explanation.
For the record, spokesmen for Luke Air Force Base say that no jets were scrambled and nothing unusual occurred. But meanwhile, the Arizona incident was a big topic at a worldwide...
of the aliens among us. A seemingly ordinary day in Phoenix, Arizona gave way to an extraordinary night. The lights appeared at 8 o'clock on March 13th, 1997, intriguing and delighting skywatchers over a 3-hour period.
I got 4 of them. Major sighting here.
No, there's 5. Another one just showed up. Whoa! Maybe somebody's saying a flight. I can't see how this works. How does this work?
As hundreds gaped at the mile-long array of lights, video cameras recorded the event from at least 4 vantage points. This is the view to the south.
We went outside and we saw the 5 lights as they approached, and we were in total disbelief of what we were seeing.
Some saw it silently gliding overhead.
It was so huge, and it seemed that there were lights on top and lights around it, and I was just terrified.
Others watched in amazement.
I couldn't believe I was watching this, and I couldn't believe I was recording it. And half the time I kept looking through the viewfinder thinking, you better be recording this.
Whatever it was, all agreed that they had seen the same thing.
This is what we saw right here. two little objects
Watch them separate.
that were off to the left, and then one by one, four of them forming a horizontal line off to the right.
In the days and weeks to follow, many would speculate that the lights were flares or ultralights or secret military aircraft, but not Jim Dilatoso. One of the world's leading analysts of UFO images, Dilatoso embarked on a painstaking study of the March 13th videos. What he found contradicted the armchair theorists.
There was a lot of talk about these being flares. So with that many people saying that they were flares, first thing that we did, study the motion of flares, study the motion of the lights in these videos, and see what we have. Now, in the idea that it might be flares, that's based on the fact that the lights are off, then they come on, and then they go off. But when you study the timing, the lights that come on first stay on the longest. The first light would have to be a flare custom made to come on and stay on the longest, let alone their optical characteristics and how stable they are in the sky.
Dilatoso then isolated all the known lights in the video: street lights, vehicle lights, airplane lights, and of course, flares. Comparisons proved that the mysterious lights in the sky showed very different optical characteristics.
After careful investigation, you find out that optically they are not flares. And they're not airplanes in formation. It wasn't on radar.
In the context of our study of the phenomena for 20 years or so, this is clearly a standout event. In my opinion, it's clearly all ET. The sighting started about 8 o'clock of this V formation of lights coming into Arizona and coming right through the Phoenix metropolitan area, being sighted in Tucson and apparently turning and leaving to the northwest out of the state in the direction that it came some 3 hours later.
The map provided a database for computer simulation.
What we did was go to the map and each of the locations where video was shot, match up that angle and that position of lights, load it all in, then go to a new view, as we've done here, and simulate the object moving and what its shape would be and what its flight path was.
Now there could be no doubt that the lights indeed formed a triangle.
We also have, in other places around the world, triangle objects and V formation of lights that have very similar, if not identical, characteristics.
In fact, this familiar-looking object and this one cruised over busy English suburbs. Along with a mysterious black triangle, they flew lower and faster than any known aircraft. In Russia, vacationers at the Black Sea resort of Sebastopol suddenly noticed a strange light in the sky. The camera reveals what the eye cannot see. The light is an object composed of two triangular shapes. An astonished crowd prompted a Russian television crew to turn their cameras skyward. On hand for an outdoor concert, they caught these images of an uninvited visitor hovering over the Georgian capital of Tbilisi. Back in the United States, an amateur cameraman recorded yet another triangular set of lights over the California desert. Hundreds of people in and around the town of Hesperia witnessed the phenomenon.
I seen a series of lights that formed a triangle.
The lights were like fireworks. They were like bright orange and yellow.
And I saw them come in, and as they came in, the lights got really big.
It was a triangle shape. It was pointed down. The nose was here. The lights were across the back here.
They were just the shape of a triangle, and I started yelling at people like, why am I the only one who sees this?
But she was not alone. As he stood in the backyard with his camera, Richard Laredo felt the urgency of his task.
You know, it's just kind of weird. You know, you have a weird feeling like excitement running through your body, adrenaline or something. And it just, you get pumped up. And I couldn't keep the camera too still.
In a sighting later confirmed by other eyewitnesses, Richard at first saw 4 lights. They made no sound, so they couldn't be an airplane. And because of his familiarity with the night sky, Richard knew they weren't stars.
They were just looked way out of place, so I came and looked at them for a little bit, and then I went back in the house and I grabbed my camera, and I came out and I started recording. And I shot as much footage as I could, and then the battery died out.
By the time Richard got his camera working again, the 4 lights had become 3. Witnesses later agreed that the lights had a yellow-orange color not recorded by the camera.
I know it is the same thing that everybody saw because I heard everybody describing it, and nobody's seen my tape before. And it's just from the color to the shape to how long it stayed in the sky to everything. It's all the same. And there's no way everybody could have seen the same thing unless it was actually there.
Another home video of the same event, shown here on the right, matches Richard's almost perfectly. Even so, some find the phenomenon hard to accept.
You don't believe it till you see it, you know, and even when you see it, it's hard to believe. You're just trying to discredit, you know, just right away, oh, it must have been an airplane, it must have been a helicopter, or, you know, but I couldn't do that.
I just seen a UFO. I'm not ashamed to say I've seen it.
Many scientists look askance at those who believe in UFOs, especially if the believer happens to be a fellow scientist. Dr. Bruce Cornett, however, proudly publishes his UFO studies on the internet.
The scientist is required to look at all of the data and analyze every little bit. I am a scientist, and I am a kind of scientist who's always broken new frontiers, been at the cutting edge of discoveries, because I've not been afraid of presenting something that goes against conventional wisdom in science.
Cornett's original work in geology led to a major revision of the U.S. Geological Survey maps. Since turning his attention to UFOs, he has collected hundreds of hours worth of video featuring strange lights in the sky. The subject has changed his entire life.
I got involved in this for the first time in my life in 1992. As a scientist, I pretty much was isolated from that area of interest. And I went to the bookstore, and the manager suggested a book, Silent Invasion by Ellen Crystal. I contacted her, she took me out into the field, and immediately started seeing things that I could not explain in normal, prosaic terms.
Oh, good God. I don't know.
Not quite.
I'm going to tell you something, honey. I don't know what the hell it is.
Videos like this raise more questions than they answer, but that only strengthens Cornett's interest. He has identified several distinct types of light formations and compares them to video of known aircraft.
This is a commercial jet flying over. I zoomed in on it, and you can actually see the fuselage. You can see the tail up here. Now this is the what I call the manta ray. Notice how brilliant that light is on the right side. And there are flashing lights in places where there is no fuselage on a plane. And even around their very brilliant lights, you do not get any obvious reflection off a fuselage. If these were conventional planes, you would get reflections. And I have taken many videos of commercial and conventional jets, and you definitely, indeed, get reflections off the fuselage by the various lights.
Cornett has found another difference from conventional airplanes in the sounds these objects sometimes make. Understanding these sounds might, he hopes, help explain the UFO mystery.
Listen to the weird sound it makes. It's clear that whoever is flying these wants to mimic a plane. They can play sounds that resemble that of conventional jets, but they contain no white noise of conventional jet engines. The distinction is that if you record the audio sound of a jet, you get this white noise on the frequency analyzer. But on these particular objects, the sound that's coming from them has none of those high-frequency sounds.
Are the sounds intended to disguise these unknown objects? For now, they remain just one more tantalizing clue.
They only give us just a little bit that is out of the ordinary. It's like a slow, time-release capsule of information.
Such information may be gotten on this moonlit hillside in Metapec, Mexico. It is a place of pilgrimage for those who would see a UFO with their own eyes, and has been so since ancient times. The Aztecs called it Tateo Iotita, meaning the place where the gods fall down.
Cut the light off, cut the light off.
No, que no le echen la luz. No, no, que si no se apaga. Turn off the light. No light.
As if on cue, a distant light winks into existence, rewarding the faithful. Everyone had expected its arrival, but this is still a magical moment. The object draws closer, revealing a second red light. The lights continue to pulse, resolve, and separate. Then, a third light becomes visible, completing the familiar triangle.
I saw it perfect.
Whether the lights belong to ETs or to gods, the witnesses feel an almost religious exultation.
It's my very first one, and I've been chasing them all over the world for years, and here it's my very first one. But somehow I knew they're real. I believed everybody, and finally I got to see one.
It makes all these stories valid, and all the it's just everything you hear, it's true because we just saw it right here.
For some, this sighting is the culmination of a lifelong quest. For others, it is only the beginning. In a sky filled with commercial air traffic, flyby encounters with UFOs occur frequently. Airline pilots report many sightings, often made at close range. Close enough, in fact, to give detailed descriptions of the unknown aircraft. Then they call the National UFO Reporting Center's Peter Davenport.
I have talked to many pilots who admit that they have seen things. It is clear that many reliable people have seen anomalous objects that by any measure should not have been there, and that appeared to the observer at the time that they were being controlled intelligently.
Pilots are among the most reliable professionals in the world, keen observers knowing at all times who shares their airspace. Airlines discourage their pilots from talking publicly about UFOs, but recorded communications between pilots and air traffic controllers are government property, available to all through the Freedom of Information Act. Listen to these actual conversations between the control tower and pilots who see something strange in the sky.
Yeah, we see traffic out there, 12 to 1 o'clock, lower altitude. Do you have one radar? Air Shuttle 5959, that's a negative, sir. I don't have anything out in front of you at 12 to 1 o'clock. Okay. Is that northwest of Detroit that you see that light? Yeah. That's where I saw it, a real bright white light, sometimes flickering. And Air Shuttle 5959, that's affirmative, and it's a light that kind of, it goes dim and it gets bright. Beside 3179, do you see the same thing? Oh, we got some kind of white light out there at 12 o'clock, and it's just sitting about the same place that it's been the whole, here for about 10 or 15 minutes we've been watching it. Would you think it might be like a reflection? Because I got nothing out there. I don't know. It looks like it's whitish, well, there's looking a little red and greenish light sort of pulsating, and it is constant. Okay, I'll keep my eyes open, but I don't see anything.
UFOs seldom show up on radar, leaving the tower unable to verify a pilot's report. Any confirmation must come from other aircraft in the area.
Speedbird 226, did it go overhead you, or was it below you? It was overhead, off to the left. As it went past us, it seemed to disappear once it was about 5 miles behind us. And on time of 405, how far off to your side did that pass, the traffic pass? It was pretty close, and it looked like a UFO. Roger that. Could it have been a meteor, or did it definitely look like an aircraft? Just do a 226 now. It couldn't have been a meteorite because
These strangely beautiful images are widely held to be the work of UFOs, exotic postcards from an alien intelligence. They're known as crop circles because they materialize in fields of grain. Some of the most intricate patterns appear near ancient sacred sites. England's Stonehenge, its own origins cloaked in mystery, stands guard over a design of breathtaking complexity. It depicts the fractal equation known as the Julia set and would take professional surveyors at least 2 days to create. Yet a pilot flying over the field said that it formed within a 10-minute window. This startling video shows a crop circle forming beneath orbiting spheres of light. Possibly the first recording of its kind, it depicts a snowflake pattern taking shape in less than 10 seconds. The mystery dominates the life of Colin Andrews, a former electrical engineer.
I've been brought up to resolve problems with meters and lights and circuit diagrams. And here I've entered a whole different situation.
Driven by a sense of mission, Andrews has become one of the world's authorities on crop circles. Along the way, he has exposed numerous hoaxes. With his own integrity on the line, he feels it essential to distinguish the genuine article from the fake.
In the hoax, plants are always broken, there are footprints in and out, the soil is powdered, and the plants are not changed at the cellular anatomic level. In the genuine crop circle, the plants are bent over evenly, they're not broken, and the internal elements have been heated very briefly, but cause on occasions the internal elements to actually be ejected out of very small holes that appear along the length of the plants. And the cell pit walls within the plants themselves are fractured by that increase in temperature.
This crop circle appeared just before dawn on the Smithfield, Utah farm of Gary Hansen. According to Gary and his sons, it carried all the hallmarks of authenticity.
When we first went into the circle, where you would walk, the stalks would break by your footprint. And that was the big thing that we really looked, and there was no broken stalks that we could ever find in any part of the circle. We couldn't find a beginning or an ending part or nothing.
The way everything was set up, it was really weird. Everything was parted so neat. The way the grain was laid down, there wasn't any tracks. The ground below it wasn't touched. I don't know, you didn't know what to think. It was kind of scary.
I did notice one thing, there's no insects in there whatsoever. You look all around it, there's grasshoppers and crickets, but there's nothing in the circle at all.
Were the insects killed by radiation or some other intense form of energy during the circle's creation? Are they kept out by residual energy? This dowser experienced dizziness upon first entering the circle, and the wands consistently indicated high energy concentrations.
What I found really fascinating is that every single time, the direction of the energy was the direction that the wheat was laying down within the crop circle. And I could be standing one way in the crop circle and ask it for the energy, and if the wheat was landing the other way, they would go straight behind me every time.
Meanwhile, investigators examine every new crop circle. They check for magnetic anomalies and carefully map the designs, hoping to someday solve the great puzzle. Investigation suggests that this video may turn out to be just a clever hoax. Still, it faithfully reflects the accounts of those who have seen the formations appear. The designs themselves inspire endless speculation. Are they messages from a higher intelligence, full of scientific and spiritual wisdom? For Colin Andrews, at least part of their meaning lies in their impact on humanity.
We have for certain a focus which is causing people to question why they're appearing, what's the energies deployed, what do they mean? And that alone is changing our collective consciousness, because we're giving ourselves the opportunity to seek a truth we don't yet know.
Knowledge of a world beyond our own has come at a terrible cost to two women who never wanted it. They live with a horror that is almost inconceivable: alien abduction.
They take us by force, perform experiments on us, perform surgical procedures, remove fetuses from our body, impregnate us. And they do it whenever they want, anytime they want.
The women breed and raise horses in southern Virginia. The ranch belongs to Anna Jamerson. Anna had been looking for a new manager when she met Beth Collins. From the start, both felt an eerie kinship.
It was like I've known her before. We've met someplace. We had this instant rapport, this instant connection between us.
Anna was very familiar to me. Not in a physical sense so much as in a very deep emotional sense, a connection with her that seemed to have gone back forever.
They felt like sisters reunited after a long separation, but their sisterhood faced a test.
I had an experience where I saw lights in the sky, found myself in the vehicle I'd been driving, going around a corner 5 miles from where I had initially seen the lights. Sick to my stomach, disoriented, frightened. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what had occurred. I felt like there was a whole chunk of time missing in my life.
Unfortunately, within 2 weeks, a very similar incident happened where she lost another hour and a half. But this time she had recollections of strange gray hands.
An emaciated sort of being who had a head that was too large, deep black eyes. Eyes that look through you rather than at you.
I initially thought Beth was going crazy. I knew she had a very active imagination. She's an artist. But I figured maybe she was losing it, that she was having a nervous breakdown.
In the weeks that followed, Beth started to remember previous abductions, confiding in Anna as hazy recollections swam into focus. She recovered long repressed memories of childhood abductions and of another little blonde-haired girl who wore a school jacket bearing a distinctive emblem. At Anna's request, Beth drew a picture of the emblem she remembered. Anna was stunned.
It was just a shock to me. I ran from the room, I went to my closet, and I pulled out my uniform jacket.
She held it up to me and she said, "Does this look familiar?" And on the breast pocket was the emblem that I had drawn.
I guess at that point I realized I was connected to these aliens just as tightly as she was, and somehow, for some reason, they had connected us together since we were children. I must have been about 3 years old. I remember being in a round white room that had this diffuse light. I remember screaming in terror because there was this really weird thing watching me. And it was an alien. It was a gray alien. And the only thing that calmed my terror was this other little blonde girl that held me.
As though a great dam had collapsed, memories that had been held back for so long now came flooding out. Beth recalled abductions from adolescence to adulthood in which she was the subject of grotesque experiments. Anna, too, became aware of teen years filled with painful surgeries and invasive procedures that continue to this day. Horrendous, vivid memories haunt her waking hours, confirmed by strange scars and mutilations.
I have very strong memories of a very long, sharp tube being inserted in my navel. I have memories of long tubes being inserted into my vagina, where I have been impregnated.
I had so much damage, uterine damage especially, ovarian damage, that I would require a complete hysterectomy.
The women struggle with feelings of dread and helpless anger, and the nightmare continues.
But there's no one here to complain to. We have no one to go to. We only have each other.
Could it be that Beth and Anna's suffering may serve some greater purpose? Did it help alien physicians save the life of this baby? Little Michael was born prematurely with a severe and inoperable heart defect. That and other complications tortured his mother, Pam.
They didn't think he would ever be well. He would have cystic fibrosis. He had retinal separation of his eye. He had a multitude of things that were wrong, and they said it would probably get worse before it would get better, if it would get better at all.
Then the impossible happened. Michael was well. His sister Crystal remembers.
All of a sudden, this miraculous change came, and
he was healthy, he was off of oxygen, he would pull out his ventilator, he would pull off his oxygen, and he didn't need it anymore.
Michael had become a normal, healthy child in every respect. Astonished doctors could not explain the miracle, but Michael could.
From the time he was old enough to open his mouth, he says, Eggman's fixed me.
That's me. I was kind of sick.
He had his brother take his marker pens and an egg out of my kitchen and paint big eyes on it. And he said, see, this is the guy that was standing right there. And he said the wall went mushy and he came right through the wall.
They faced me all up, sword me.
Incredibly, Michael remembers what happened.
The alien picked my heart out of there.
He says, Eggman's fixed my heart. And I said, how? He says, I don't know. They used a light or something. He says, I don't know how they did it. It's hard to understand. I told my son he was pulling one. I told him he was dreaming. I said he had just had a bad dream. I didn't believe him from the beginning.
But Michael's brother and sister did believe him and documented his recollections in a series of detailed drawings. One detail in particular finally convinced Pam that Michael was telling the truth.
He says, Mom, in this room where the door was locked, he says, the Eggmans took me in there and said, don't touch it, it's not toys. And he said, there were bottles all over the room, he says, with babies in them. He says, embryos. And I said, embryo? I said, what's an embryo? He says, that's an Eggman baby, duh. He says, they can't be in the mommies, so they have to be in the bottles to grow. And I was flabbergasted because he had, there's nothing a 2-year-old knows about embryos.
Michael knows what he saw. He also knows what happened when his life hung in the balance. Michael says the aliens are his friends.
You can't deny what crosses your path. It's crossed in front of us, and they can't be bad. They can't be bad if they can fix Michael. I can deal with that.
Further evidence of friendly aliens comes from a man who recorded these arresting images of an alien spacecraft, as well as photographs of the aliens themselves. The man is Hugo Batallanos. He says the aliens guide his camera.
This video I obtained from messages from people from space. They tell me the time, the place, in order to take the videos.
Hugo first experienced alien contact in his native Argentina. He tells how he heard a friendly voice that directed him towards a spacecraft. The voice then invited him to enter and told him what he must do.
I put my hand on the spacecraft and my hand was entering at the matter. Then my shoulder, then all my body entering at the spacecraft.
Hugo learned that the aliens and their spacecraft function at a level of energy unfamiliar to earthly science.
In order that we can understand this, I make you for one example. You could see my hand. When I put movements of my hand, you could see that my hand is not so clear. But if I put more energy, you couldn't see my hand. But my hand doesn't exist. But in another vibration. If you couldn't see with your eye, doesn't mean that the hand doesn't exist.
The aliens have contacted many other people, says Hugo, to spread their message for all of humankind. The people of Earth must join together, work together, and love one another. Only then will we take our place in the greater civilization represented by the aliens. Only then will we perceive and be received in that other dimension. A great mystery haunts the Hudson River Valley near Pine Bush, New York. Frequent sightings here make this a notorious UFO hotspot, but the woods conceal an equally bizarre riddle. Curious shelters like this appear throughout the forest. Constructed from huge blocks of granite fitted together without mortar, their unknown architects built them to last for millennia. In design and construction, they bear an uncanny resemblance to structures left by the Druids of ancient Britain. Yet the true purpose and origin of these stone chambers remain shrouded in antiquity. Phil Imbronio, Marilyn Horrigan, and Martin Breck study the chambers, hoping to discover their secret meaning. The chambers have so far yielded little in the way of proof, but one intriguing clue caught the researchers' attention early on, according to Phil Imbronio.
What got us interested into this is that we noticed that there were areas of concentrations of UFOs and other paranormal activity. When we went out to investigate these areas, we always found a chamber or a carved standing stone.
More than 100 stone chambers dot the countryside within a 30-mile radius of the UFO hotspot. Martin Breck has a unique interest in the research. The recent wave of sightings began when he reported seeing a UFO.
It just followed this very fixed pattern, moved along silently, and it could not have been an airplane because there was no noise and it was too stable.
The UFO flew right over the path of these chambers, and these chambers, by the way, are also located in areas of intense magnetic anomalies.
Hoping that his knowledge of UFOs and geology might help solve the mystery, the team called in Dr. Bruce Cornett.
I brought along the magnetometer, and I mapped the magnetism around these chambers. What I found was quite amazing, that the magnetic intensity increases as you approach the chamber and is highest right in front of the door. And in some cases, the magnetism is so high that it reverses the Earth's magnetic field.
Cornett's findings indicate that some highly magnetic material lies buried beneath the chamber's entrance. Imbronio thinks he knows why.
I believe that the chambers actually mark areas of high energy, portals to a parallel reality, a concept that is not as far-fetched as you think. The late Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was professor of astronomy at Northwestern University, proposed the idea that UFOs themselves do not come from space, from some other star system, that they actually come from another dimension.
If the chambers act like beacons for interdimensional portals, it could explain the many UFO sightings in the area, according to researcher Marilyn Horrigan.
The UFOs easily could be using that as a way to travel. You always have the sightings that disappear. Where did they go? Someone sees them and the light just disappears, it blinks away. They've traveled to another parallel universe. These chambers seem to be a focus to that.
Or do the chambers themselves act as passageways?
People have witnessed unusual beings or non-humans materializing or coming out of the chambers.
The stone chambers connect our natural world to the supernatural. Similar doorways exist in other places. This remote mountain home in Colorado Springs, Colorado, coexists with an interdimensional portal. It may look quiet now, but frequently ethereal travelers make their presence known to Steve and Beth Lee.
You can lay in the bed and turn off all the lights, and it looks kind of like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or like some kind of lightning.
Strange lights and ghostly clouds appear in photographs taken throughout the house. Sometimes the mists resolve into distinct forms, reflecting images of another world.
I'm going to kind of outline it here for you. It's right here, all right? There's a woman right here. There's a man right here.
Photographs of ghosts seldom reveal so much detail. Rarely do they appear in such startling clarity. Alan Wiedertz, a Hollywood photographic expert, agreed to examine the picture for evidence of fakery.
It doesn't look as if the photograph has been retouched, but this particular photograph with the images of the faces are quite baffling.
Outside the house, weird lights come and go in the night.
My security camera right here, I was filming for several nights in a row. My parents put this camera up because they were scared.
Steve and Beth grew more and more concerned. Steve plunged into research at the library, but found no answers. Not knowing where else to turn, he finally appealed to his state senator, Charles Duke.
He had been talking to many representatives in government, and it so semi-spooky, nobody really wanted to touch it, and that was sort of his last resort. I was very skeptical, even so. So I thought while I was at it, I'd just go around and shoot some pictures of my own. I shot up about a roll.
When the photos came back from the lab, Duke could hardly believe his eyes.
The one picture that has a light beam on a ceiling beam, there's nothing on that beam to cause that. It's just there. In addition, there appears to be some sort of an ethereal face here. I don't know what is causing this, but I tend to believe that it's real because it appeared on film.
Beth believes that the images come through an interdimensional portal or vortex.
The reason the vortex is so strong is because there used to be some kind of doorway a long time ago built in that same location. And now that the house is sitting on top of that doorway, they're still using the doorway to come and go.
Steve takes a different view.
The guy that used to own my property started a mortuary in Colorado Springs. They think that maybe he planted a bunch of bodies out here and supposed to bury them in graveyards and didn't.
Do these photographs document visitors from another dimension or homeless ghosts looking for their graves? They may be one and the same, but they are there nevertheless. The mirror does not lie. Far away in Kenosha, Wisconsin, another mirror reflects unearthly lights. It hangs in a former girls' school called Kemper Hall. People started reporting ghosts here in the 1930s, and sightings continue to this day. Strange, wispy clouds envelop the trees in the quadrangle. A faint but distinct form drifts past the chapel. Other ghosts dwell here also. Kemper Hall once belonged to Charles Durkee, a prominent figure in early Wisconsin politics. His second wife went mad in this house. In 1865, Durkee donated the property to the Episcopal Church. The church entrusted it to the Sisters of St. Mary, who turned it into a school for girls. Many believe that the ghosts of the sisters who taught here haunt Kemper Hall today. Photographic evidence supports their belief. Some see a hooded nun in the window of a room once used as the infirmary. A ghostly face seems to peer through another window on the floor below. A nearby cemetery serves as the final resting place for many of the sisters who taught at Kemper Hall. Or does it? Could that mist rising from the grave be the restless ghost of a Kemper Hall nun? Susan Agnes Sander worked at the school as a young woman in the early 1930s. She remembers her encounter with a Kemper Hall ghost.
Came out into the hall and I heard footsteps coming down. I thought, now, all the girls are at the lunch table. Who in the world can that be? And I saw a figure coming down the stairs, and it would be like looking at you. I got so scared. I went to the door to get out of the hall, and my hand froze on the doorknob.
Even stranger things have happened, according to local resident Brian Knudsen.
One day, one of the groundskeepers was taking a short break, leaning on his rake, and around the corner of the school came a group of the girls wearing their school uniforms, laughing and joking, passed right in front of the man, disappeared around another corner of the building. He walked around the building and looked for them, and they were already gone. And this was several years after the school had closed.
Since the closing in 1975, ghost hunters like Richard Crow have been denied entry to the buildings. Although he and fellow ghost hunter John Cale must limit their research to the outside, they too have seen and photographed ghosts.
All of a sudden, in the window of the chapel, a figure originates, and the shape originates, and it kicks off through the top of the door, then it moves from right to left in a linear movement. The figure makes more appearances. I have no idea what it could be, other than just an anomaly caught on video.
Does the video indeed show a mere anomaly? Perhaps instead, the ghosts of the sisters benignly watch over their old school, as love persists beyond death. Hatred, too, transcends the grave. Malevolent forces conspire in a curse upon the living.
It's the most evil thing I've ever seen in my life.
This is the most alarming and close encounter I've ever had with evil in my life.
The object in question, a 10-inch long human skeleton, a gruesome curio that had been acquired by Tony Capp.
My advice would be to anybody that wishes to touch it is to leave it alone. Let it rest and don't take it out of the box, because that is when the trouble starts. I had a chef working for me, and he asked me if he could take it home to show his wife. And I said, do not take it out of the box. I don't want it moved. But on returning, I had seen that it had been moved. The following Saturday, him and 3 others were coming back from London, and there was a head-on collision, and he was decapitated, but the other 3 walked out the car safe.
Tony then resolved to get it out of his life forever.
I gave it to an auctioneer called Jeff Bright. 2 days later, he was found hanging by his wife. There was no known reason why he hung himself.
Now desperate to avoid any further tragedy, Tony hired one of England's foremost psychic investigators. His name is Graham Wiley.
Immediately, I felt horror. I asked him if I could borrow it. He said, at your own risk. I spoke to a top Home Office pathologist that works for Scotland Yard. He examined it, he x-rayed it, and confirmed that it was a shrunken man.
What was the secret behind the miniature skeleton? Wiley enlisted the aid of a medium, Margaret Barrett, to delve into the mystery.
I said I would try and find out who he was and something of his life history.
According to Margaret, the remains belonged to an 18th century sailor named William Young. On a fateful voyage, William incurred the wrath of an African witch doctor, whereupon he began to shrink.
Eventually he became so short that he had to leave the sea. And by this time he was only 2 feet 10 inches. So he came back to Brixham and he died.
Wiley then sought corroborating evidence for Margaret's bizarre account.
I checked with a historian in Brixham, and we were able to find, in 1748, one casket to be made for an unknown body, 10 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches, which is that casket.
Wiley plans to have the skeleton buried with him when he dies. That way, he says, he will carry the power of these tiny bones away from our world. The power that cloaked these bones passed from our world long ago, but now it has perhaps returned in alien flesh. A controversial project by paleontologist Dale Russell links dinosaurs and ETs. While studying the bones of a small dinosaur, Dr. Russell wondered what this creature might look like today had its evolution continued.
We wanted to stick to dinosaur morphology as we understood it. We wanted to show what this dinosaur might have evolved into had the dinosaurs not become extinct.
Russell simulated the evolutionary process on a computer. Notice that this particular dinosaur had a 3-fingered hand with an opposable thumb, a large brain, and it walked upright. It could have evolved into a dinosaur.
And we have a model of a very unusual, rather arresting creature, I should say.
ET researcher John Rhodes describes the archetypal alien.
Scaled skin, vertical slit pupils, and they have 3 fingers with an opposable thumb, very much like the dinosaurs used to have.
One current theory says that life came to Earth on meteors that carried genetic material.
These reptilian beings may not be evolved dinosaurs that survived the extinction 66 million years ago, but they may be shared life forms that have the base DNA that's the same, that are coming from other planets to visit ours.
Did dinosaur cousins on distant planets follow the evolutionary path of Russell's Dinosaur? Some critics say the Dinosaur has a source much closer to home.
I would say, no way, sir. We did not copy it. We took it from the history of life on Earth and we stuck to it.
Even if Russell's Dinosaur never evolved to roam the stars, one fact remains. As we add to our meager store of knowledge, we discover that we are somehow related to all things in this strange universe.